Welcome to Nightmares Before Bed, a supernatural podcast where each show will explore dark and mysterious places, eerie creatures, and all things spooky and creepy. And speaking of spooky and creepy, please help me welcome your hosts Jonathan Rosen and Troy Cannon.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Nightmares Before Bed. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Troy Cannon. And today we're going to talk about a really creepy story, to me at least. We're going to talk about the Melon Heads of, they're like actually all over. I thought it was like just Connecticut, but they're legends like really like all over the place. And about this, well, up north, I've seen like, Michigan and everything, but it's like these little humanoid creatures who live like in the woods, of course, nowhere else. And they're not seen. They're supposedly like inbred for generations, have these big bulbous heads, and they survive on eating animals or people. They capture people. So did you know about them beforehand?
Didn't know. Excuse me. I know about the movies that had been spawned because of the Melon Heads, like The Hills Have Eyes and stuff like that. But I didn't know that it was based on any actual substance. I thought it was just, some dude woke up and said, "Hey, you know what would be a real terrible, horrible show?" And he just did it. I didn't know that they had based this on anything until like a week ago. And then I looked into it and I'm like, wow, that's kind of creepy. These, like you said, inbred,
right,
giant head, melon head things running around. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
You and I were speaking about this before. I mean, we'll go into a little bit of the legends, all the different stories in a minute. Mm-hmm. You and I were speaking about this before. Now, I agreed with you. I think, you said it, and, I thought the same exact thing. We could go in, and I would go out like with a Bigfoot hunt. I would go out looking for like different things. It may be scary, but I would do it. I would just say, I don't mess with people like cannibal people pull you in. I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to go into like areas that I know that there might be that it's like deliverance on caffeine. That just the raping is bad enough. Okay, that's really bad enough if you think that they might do that to you. But when you know that there are people that the legend is that these people might eat you, I'm not going there.
Yeah, they I after checking it out, after looking it up, I found out like you said, it's in multiple states, Connecticut, Michigan, and Ohio. So I was like, well, that's weird. How's it in all of these different places? Bigfoot is a phenomenon that's scattered everywhere.
Right.
And I thought, something like this would be contained in one little spot, but it's all over the place too. After reading about them, I found out that they are possibly.
They're supposed to be small too. They're not supposed to be like regular size. They're like supposed to be smaller, like people or humanoids, whatever. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, like kids or something.
Right.
And I thought two things. I thought one that reminded me a lot of the St. Pete mini lights, because they both are supposedly children-sized things that hunt at night, and there's an abnormality with their head, either their eyes or the size of their head, and they chase people through the catacombs of the woods, or the tough urban St. Pete streets, or
yes.
they're chasing people, trying to get people, possibly because of something that happened to them with the mini lights.
Right.
It was a death that started it with these guys. It could have possibly, one of the stories I read was, it could have possibly been a death. There was a guy that was either adopted them, I read, and I also read that he could have possibly been in charge of an insane asylum
I read
These
that too,
kids
the
were
insane asylum theory.
insane asylum, and
Right.
he either treated them really badly in the insane asylum and they escaped, or he adopted them and treated them really badly. But either way, they it's the same dude, two different stories. He's treating these kids bad. He dies or they escape, um, depending on which story you hear. And now they're out in the woods surviving, as best they can, because they probably have some type of mental deformity. There's
Right.
something wrong with their head, and they know that they can't adjust in modern society. So they're out there in the woods, living like Grizzly Adams, out there tackling bears and yak or whatever is out there in those woods. So supposedly, if you go down Wizard Road,
By the way,
there's a
I don't
place.
recall an episode of Grizzly Adams where he ate a guy, but this one, yes,
The bear might have.
yes, the bear meat, yes. But yeah, sorry, yes.
Oh, no, you're good. So you go down, there's people driving and they're going down Wizard Road. And one video I saw, this guy was like, he's driving, and then up under it says, a lower third says, keep an eye on this side of the camera. So I'm like, so I'm looking because I'm like, okay, it's not like it's going to jump through the camera and get me. So I'm like, let me take a closer look. And I'm leaning there and nothing. He turns the camera away, and then when he comes back, he stops his car and says, "There's a deer leg in the street." And I was like, I didn't see it show up. Nothing through it. There was nothing there, and it wasn't anything. So I was like, that kind of sucked, because I was kind of hoping to see like this mole man-esque creature run through the street with a gigantic head that is balancing on a small neck, and I didn't. But there's a lot of people apparently that believe these things exist, and a lot of campers. I don't. People don't watch horror movies anymore. You're not supposed to go camping out in places like
Right.
that. But there's
Yes.
a lot of campers that say they run into them. So I'd be cautious.
So what do you do if you're out driving alone in the forest in the middle of the night and you see this little people going across the
Step
road?
on the gas.
Yes, that's
I
what I'm
step on the
saying.
gas.
I'm not
I'm like,
stopping. If you're getting in the way, I'm not. But I can just imagine like that horror movie thing that you step on the gas and all of a sudden you're like swarming on your car. They're like holding on and trying to get in.
yeah, they'd have to do. I'd have to throw it in reverse or something. I'm not. I'm not going to do one of the movie tropes where I get out with a flashlight and I'm like,
Right, and start
hello,
investigating. Yes, exactly.
hello. That's not going to happen. That'll
Every
never
time that
happen.
happens, that guy's dead. It's just a matter of
Yep.
time. That guy's dead. Now, I was looking at the things that, of course, like all the tropes, the thing. No one, anytime they mention like it's a mental facility, mental institution around the area, no records of these things exist. So I mean, it's always the same thing. There's always the legend, and then the people can't find legend is from. It was always interesting to me how these things started, because they can't find any record of any mental institutions with this, and some of the other places that they mentioned, they weren't here. They just didn't exist. So it's like, where did these stories come from? And I was reading further ahead. It's like these things came back. Even in Europe, they were like all these stories about deformed people in the woods or whatever, who you have to avoid. So it seems like those stories from Europe got transferred over here when this country was settled. But what else here? Where was it here? Oh yeah, that I mean, but there are legends, and like we've talked about this in other episodes too, that legends that people even before European settlers got here, that the natives had like these legends avoid these areas too. So it's always interesting that that these are going out no matter what the culture. There are similar legends about these type of things.
There's reading what I read about them and looking at videos and stuff like that and getting information. What I would deduce with my very humble knowledge of such things, what I would say is people are possibly sometimes when people say that they're misidentifying things, I'm like, no, he probably saw Bigfoot. I'm probably, I'm on the side of the non-skeptic. I'm on the side of believers. But in this case, I think they might be misidentifying something. I'm thinking short, humanoid-esque creature.
Mm-hmm.
Short, large, proportioned head, misconstrued skin color. I'm thinking maybe they're saying grays, and they're thinking they're humans. Because that's if I didn't know about the melon head and you were to just describe it to me, I'd be like, oh yeah,
Sounds alien.
great,
Right.
the aliens. That's what it sounds like to me. Because when you put if you were to put somebody in a room that saw a melon head and sit them in another room with somebody who saw an alien, a gray, and they were both to give a description, it would sound hauntingly similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking maybe, possibly, these are grays that the people are seeing, and they're thinking about an old legend, and they're like, oh, you know what? That's the Melon Heads, and they're calling them that. Like, what did we do? We did a Mothman.
Mothman, right?
We did the Mothman prophecy.
Right.
Now, in the Mothman, when I went there, there's a lot of information on the Mothman, but there was almost equal information on aliens. And some people were say that they were misconstruing them, and there was actually aliens that they were identifying as the Mothman, and maybe the Mothman was an alien, and then there was the Men in Black and all this other kinds of stuff. I'm thinking, this is possible. I've even heard people mix up some stories about Bigfoot with alien stories. So I'm thinking maybe, it's possible. It might not be. I've never seen a melon head, but with the description, it makes me think a lot of the grays.
You said you've not heard of this legend before we started researching it this week, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, I've heard. I don't think I've heard this one particular, like melon heads. You hear things like, but people like little. That's always a legend. It's a lot of it is like city bias towards like country folk, like all these inbred clans, like, living somewhere that, be careful of them. They're like, well, these are like really hicks on steroids, just to be careful. But it could be a lot of city bias too. But it's interesting that so many places have this one legend. And we're looking at, we said there was like, Michigan here, Ohio, Connecticut, all these same things. And a lot of them have the same stories. It's like either like witchcraft or escape from mental institutions or escape from hospitals where they did research on people. And, or just like people that have wanted to avoid others, which I don't blame them for. Just wanting to avoid, society in general and lived among themselves. But it just reminded me. Well, looking at the set, you were an X-Files fan too, right?
Yeah.
So you remember that episode Home with the inbred people with the mother under the bed, which is the creepiest episode of television that I think I've ever seen in anything. And I don't even know if I could watch it again. I saw that once, and I think that was enough for me to watch it again. And I got to speak to Dean Haglund, one of the lone gunmen, about that episode. So. It's just so creepy just to think about that there might be something like this out there. That's the thing, scary, that it's possible.
It's possible. Was there before I moved to the South, I lived in Jersey, of course, and as a kid, when my mom decided, we've got family in the South, we're going to move to Florida. I was excited. I was like, okay, yeah, beaches,
right.
Because when I was a kid, not giving away my age, but when I was a kid, there was a real popular show on TV. Well, it was a movie, but it was on TV all the time called Beach Blanket Bingo.
I love that movie.
Beach Blanket Bingo. That's a great movie.
Yes.
Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon.
Yeah.
Great movie. It's surprisingly, it's in one of my top 10 movies.
I do like that movie a lot.
I love that movie. Beach Blanket Bingo. They were always so happy. They were surfing and everything, and they were always happy. They were always dancing for some reason on the beach. And I was like, wow, this got to be Florida. I didn't know it was California. I thought it was Florida. I thought the only beaches were in Florida. I was a little kid. So when my mom said we're moving there, I was real excited. But one of my uncles who had a propensity for bringing me down sat next to me and said, you know, they're going to get you when you go out there. And I was like, oh, I can remember talking about this now. It makes me remember this because I can see him walking into the room and he sat next to me and I'm thinking, what the heck does he want? And he's like talking to me as if he's giving me a warning about Southern folk. No offense to Southern folk, but this kind of thing usually happens according to legend in the South.
Yeah.
He said that he told me that that there's people down there that will get you because they're inbred. I didn't know what inbred meant. Doesn't sound right. And he explained it to me. And later in life, I watched Deliverance, and that was terrible. And then later in life, because what happens to the guy where they're making him say "suey" and stuff like that.
Feel like a pig, yeah, right.
For the show, for the movie, for the audience, you're just watching him make squealing noises while they're standing behind him, yanking on his clothes. But intellectually, what they're saying is these guys are having their way with this man.
Right.
They just don't want to show it on the screen. They're just going to do it in a more artistic way. And I was thinking, dude, those guys wait a minute. I know what's happening here. And that was terrifying to me because I was like, if I go out into the woods, someone's going to grab me and there's going to be some suey screaming and stuff. So I was like, I don't want the woods because the people who live out there are like those melon heads. They're subhuman. They're subhuman people. And that terrified me because I thought that could be a real thing. I thought when I was younger, anytime you go out in the woods, those people could be out there. So I avoided the woods.
That's exactly it. It's also like the Pulp Fiction scene, the same type thing. But Pulp Fiction, yeah. I've watched again. I've seen Deliverance once, and again, that was another movie that was it for me. I can't go back and see it again. That's one movie that I will never be able to go watching a second. Yeah, I said Deliverance is one movie that I can never see again. That bothered me too much. I still talk about the banjo scene. I can't watch that movie again. It was, and I went into it not knowing what it was about when watching it. I just knew that it's an acclaimed movie, so I watched it. Like my jaw's dropping as I'm watching this movie. Like, what's going on? Like you said, like the same type thing. No more watching this film for me.
Yep. And when I saw that kid with the banjo,
right,
dueling banjos, I was thinking that's what they look like. They all look like that. And you know what? If his head was a little bigger,
yes,
he'd be like a melon head. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I guess, people for a long time have had the idea of what these people could be, where they could have come from, and how they could evolve into these large, light bulbed head entities. And
generations of inbreeding, but yes,
that'll do it.
So, yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, that was it. That's just that banjo. When I saw that kid, I was like, that's what I'm supposed to avoid.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything. There are some variations of it. I was looking at, many states, not just, the ones that I mentioned, but, over here, I'm in Florida, and there are like different stories here about avoiding the certain people that live in the woods or live in the swamps or anything like that. So it is interesting that it is all over. And unlike some of the things, there are some things that I have to be, I'd be skeptical of. I don't know. They're, like the St. Pete mini lights. I'm not sure if I believe in the St. Pete mini lights or anything like that. It's like I believe more like they could be something like ghosts or something like that. I do have that it's possible. But more than the mini lights, like I said, which I don't know if I would believe. I believe that it's possible that there could be some little groups of people that are doing whatever out there that they don't want to be discovered. And if you wander upon their lair, their den, or their area, their territory, you're in trouble. That I could see that much more than a lot of the other things, and that to me is much more terrifying than some of the other stuff that we've covered.
Yeah, the the little pinky of reality that's dipped into this stuff, it makes it more horrifying. Trying to think if there was anything. There's a place called the Flint Mansion, and I believe that's in Michigan. The Flint Mansion is supposedly where they originated, and it's a place that if I ever make it to Michigan, I am going to go because you can rent a room there, unless it's like the one down the street where the rooms are $400. I'm not doing that, but it's a place called the Flint Mansion. I guess it's Flint, Michigan, because I've heard of Flint, Michigan, but the Flint Mansion supposedly is where they originated. I think it was originally the insane asylum, and then they still haunt or hunt in that area because I guess they consider that home.
Yeah.
But again, like the mini lights in St. Pete, people would say Booker's Creek, people would say Childs Park, people would say on Ninth Avenue or wherever. But essentially, the story is they were traveling between those two areas. So the Flint Mansion is possibly where they originated, and they just kind of migrated or herded themselves. I don't know how the movement of crazy people, they insanely walked down the street or whatever, and they're all over the place. But when I saw that, I was like, I wonder if that's a place you can visit. And while I'm going through it, I'm like, oh, you can visit that. So I'm thinking that might end up on my list of places now that I know about it. That could be it.
But I was reading, I'm sure you saw the same ones that, like I said, we said from Europe, there were like stories of, people with large heads, in the woods going back into Germany, into England. So it is, you have the same type of stories just passed down. And it was probably brought here, through legends. But, I saw the similar stories. I don't know if you saw this one, the frog people, also in Connecticut. They had the faceless people of Monroe, the Mongoloid village. So there are similar stories with different names of these people, in different areas. So it is out there. There are a lot of similar stories based on this. And this one, I was reading about some of the legends of people disappearing. One was a group of high school girls, of course, in Fairfield, that they stopped and they disappeared. But there are several stories about that. They're saying that they know remains, that they found certain remains, but a lot of the bodies were gone, leading to the cannibalism part. I don't even know if it counts as cannibalism, if they're different species or not, but of these people. But just that aspect, like I said before, that's the aspect that sticks with you and really starts creeping you out. The eating you part.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Being eaten, especially alive, you see bits and pieces of your body getting ripped up, right, and something standing over you digesting.
That's some Walking Dead crap, right over there.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
So okay, so let's go back to, okay, as we're wrapping this up, kind of. So what do we think? So most of the things we talk about, yeah, I could see that, is this true or not? So what do you think of this? Do you think there's anything to the legend? Do you think there's something there? What are your thoughts on that?
I think throughout all of America, there are probably little pods of inbred folks living out there in the wilderness. When I was in school, I was in you've got the Boy Scouts, and then you've got the Weeblos, or you got the Cub Scouts, the Weeblos, and the Boy Scouts. I was in the Weeblos, heading towards the higher scout. I was trying to get all my badges and everything. And one of the things we had to do was go on an overnight camp. And one of the guys that was there, I don't want to say his name. Nobody probably knows him anyways. It's just a guy in St. Pete. But we were sitting around and we were talking. We were waiting for the camp guy to come and load up the van and everything. And we're all just standing around the van, just talking. And one guy talks about his intimate conquests with a girl on the cheerleading team. And another guy mentions a conquest, and then one guy says,
Wait, how old were you guys then? Wait, I thought this was
we were young. We were
that's
like
what I'm saying. This is before Boy Scouts. Okay, yeah.
this is before Boy Scouts. And
Okay.
everybody's talking, and we're all listening. Everybody's listening to stories, and one guy says, "Yeah, I did that with my sister." And I was like, "You what?" And he said, "Yeah, everybody does that." And I was like, "They do
They do not.
They do not." And his nonchalantness about saying this, his thinking that it would be a-okay to say this, even at that time, made me think that in his mind he thought it was okay, probably because he had had that conversation with other people.
Other people, right?
Yeah, and they were like, "Yeah, of course, yeah, your aunt, your sister, your uncle, yeah, it's just what you do." That mentality could not have just been that dude. It's all over the place.
It's not.
People do that. You should never do that. That is terrible. But that mentality, even back then, I was thinking, wow, he can't be the only guy that does that. That's got to happen all over the place. And then it started making me look at the guys that I was standing around, and I was like, well, that guy's got a sister. So is that guy. And I'm wondering about it. So now, having this conversation today, I'm thinking back to that and thinking, that dude today is our age. He's an adult and everything. And if he had
so young, like mid-20s.
Yeah, right now, 20-ish. If he would have spawned a child, his child would have looked like those dudes climbing out of that hole behind you. So it happens all over the place. And I'm thinking, when that happens and you have a child, then do you raise that child? Do you give that child up? What happens to the child? They probably end up in the woods somewhere. That's got to happen for the last couple hundred years. Of all of the people in the woods, like 300 million people in America, it happens a lot. There's got to be, that's something that's really based in fact, because that happens.
I will say I have a similar story, and not me. I'm going to reiterate, not me. Okay. I knew, this was in college. I knew a girl in college who hinted, it was probably late time, that hinted that she had done something with her brother. And just like, hey, did you ever no, no. It's it's like one of those conversations that stuns you, and you can't wait to get out of it. You can't wait to get out of that conversation. Oh, okay, let's talk about the weather now. No, but yeah, I know someone also. Yeah, now that you mentioned, yes, I did know someone who we used to talk about that for, because I wasn't alone with her when she brought this up, and it's like we talked about that for a long time. All my other friends said to me after that episode happened, that incident happened. So, and I'm not mentioning names either, just in case she ever watches this episode. But yeah, it's so I'm not naive to think that it hasn't happened with people that around the world, and I know cultures that it's that's kind of acceptable that you read about. But once you start having, you talk about the ancient Egypt stuff, all the deformities that they said. But once you see that, and you keep going down the line, you could see that something like that possibly could happen. And there are actual stories of little groups of families that are just inbred. And now, there was now we have to look it up. I wish I did. That they can barely talk anymore. Their communication things is so bad because they're just working in such a cognitive decline on things that so you could see that it's possible that you're not thinking along the lines of, hey, I can't eat these people. Yeah, maybe I could if it's there. So yeah, I'm with you. I can see this. I don't know about if there are melon heads out there, but I can see that there being something that leads to the legend of this, that leads to the fear and fright. And you and I keep saying it. We said it during the week again before we talked about on this episode. People scare me a hell of a lot more than possible creatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I agree.
yeah, that's it. So I can see something to this. But all right, well, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Have you heard about this? Have you seen this? Know anyone's experienced it? And what kind of legends are in your neck of the woods? hopefully you're not in those woods that have those people though. But again, this has been Nightmares Before Bed. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Troy Cannon, and please like, comment, and subscribe.
Subscribe.
Thank you for watching Nightmares Before Bed. And now, it's time to shut the lights, close your eyes, and go to sleep. If you can.